I never thought I would write about something like this, but maybe I need to. Sometimes when something strange happens inside your own home, you don't recognize the danger right away. You excuse it, you call it a phase, you blame stress, school, hormones, anything except the truth. And in my case, the truth started with one ridiculous sentence. So small that if I told you out of context, you'd think I was overreacting. But in that moment, it wasn't small at all. My son, Lucas, 15 years old, looked at me with an expression I still can't fully understand. It wasn't his usual smile. It wasn't a silly teenage grin. It was twisted, almost arrogant, like he had suddenly discovered he had power over me. And he said, "Now I'm the boss, you clean the toilet." My mind froze. Literally froze. I had just taken the pot off the stove. Steam was rising past my face. The kitchen smelled like garlic and butter. And his words cut straight through all of it like cold wind. Yes, we had made a bet. A stupid, harmless house chore challenge. Something I suggested, trying to bond with him. Lucas had been distant lately. Dry, irritable, almost hostile some days. I thought a little mother-son competition might lighten things up. He won. By 1 point. The prize was choosing a chore the loser had to do. I thought he would pick dishes. Or laundry. Or sweeping the porch. Normal things. But he didn't pick a task. He picked humiliation. And not because cleaning a toilet is humiliating, everyone does it, but because of the way he said it. The pleasure behind the words. The command. Tone. "Lucas, stop." I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Why? You said you'd do it. You lost. Rules are rules." He stood there in the doorway, arms crossed, watching me. Not joking. Not teasing. It was a test. A twisted experiment, like he was trying to see how far his influence reached. And that scared me. Not the chore, but the look in his eyes. Kind of delight. A kind of power. And maybe, if I'm being honest, it was partially my fault. Working all day, being exhausted all the time, raising a teenager practically on my own. There were behaviors I let slide. Attitudes I dismissed. Roles I ignored. Moments of disrespect I brushed aside because I didn't have the energy to fight. Maybe they piled up. Maybe they grew. Maybe something ugly had been forming in him for a long time. I swallowed hard. "Let's just have dinner, okay? Enough with the game." "No. You clean it." "I won." He said it like an adult picking a fight. Not a 15-year-old boy. I could feel my pulse in my neck. I could also feel that if I pushed back right then, it would turn into something explosive. Something unnecessary. Something I wasn't ready to handle. So I went upstairs. Not because I accepted it, but because the silence would give me time to think. In the bathroom, putting on gloves, I felt a mix of humiliation and clarity. My hands were scrubbing the porcelain, but my mind was racing. How did we get here? How did a silly bet turn into this? I could hear him downstairs, walking around, opening cabinets, humming, as if he had just won a victory over me. As if he had proven something. And maybe he had. Maybe he proved that something was very, very wrong. Lucas had always had a strong personality. Determined, stubborn, intense. But lately there was something else. Something darker. A lack of empathy. A sense of entitlement. A growing need to dominate small situations. And seeing him smile. That smile. While telling his own mother to clean a toilet like a servant. That was the moment I realized this wasn't teenage attitude. This was a problem. And something told me it was only the beginning. Because while I was cleaning the toilet, planning to talk to him later, he was downstairs planning something completely different. And I still had no idea how far he was willing to go. When I came back downstairs after cleaning the toilet, Lucas was sitting at the table eating dinner like nothing had happened. He didn't even look up when I entered. He just shoveled food into his mouth, eyes on his phone, completely unfazed. But something in the room had changed. Felt colder. He felt colder. I sat down in silence. He didn't acknowledge me, not even a fake thanks for cooking, not even a glance. It was like I had become invisible in my own house. And I realized something unsettling. Lucas enjoyed what happened earlier. Not the chore. Not the joke, but the domination. I watched him from across the table. The way he leaned back, the way his jaw set when he chewed, the way he ignored everything around him except the glowing screen. I knew this boy. I raised this boy. But at that moment I didn't recognize him. Felt like someone else had taken his place. "Lucas, can we talk?" Finally asked. He didn't even pause. "Can it wait? I'm watching something." His tone wasn't annoyed. It wasn't tired. It was dismissive, the kind of tone people use on telemarketers or bad customer service. Like talking to me was an inconvenience. And that hurt more than I expected. "It's important," I insisted. He sighed dramatically, locked his phone and leaned back. "Fine." "What?" Just that single word, "what," carried so much disdain that I felt my chest tighten. "We need to talk about earlier," I started carefully. "The way you spoke to Mom." "Stop." He cut me off, raising a hand. "It was a game. You're the one who said the loser had to obey the winner. I didn't force anything." "Don't be dramatic." Dramatic. That word hit me right in the stomach. It was the same word his father used to throw at me before he walked out years ago. And Lucas knew that. Or maybe he didn't consciously know, but some part of him had learned which words could make me shut down. "It wasn't the task," I tried to explain calmly. "It was the way you spoke to me." He smirked, that same smirk I saw earlier in the hallway. "Maybe you're just sensitive." For a moment I had no words. He took his plate, stood up, walked to the sink and dropped it inside, without rinsing, without turning around, and said, "Next time don't play games you can't handle." Then he left the kitchen. I stayed there, alone, staring at the half-eaten dinner, feeling something I never thought I would feel toward my own son. A hint of fear. Not fear of harm, but fear of losing him completely. Fear that I wasn't dealing with a phase, but a deeply rooted behavior that I had ignored for too long. And then something even more worrying happened. Around 11 p.m., I heard him laughing in his room. Loud, uncontrolled, almost manic laughter. I walked to the hallway and listened. It wasn't the laughter of a kid watching a funny video. It was sharper, meaner. Like someone laughing at another person's misfortune. I knocked on the door. "Lucas." The laughter stopped immediately. A few seconds later, the door opened just a crack. Only one of his eyes was visible through the gap. "What? Are you okay?" "I'm fine. Can I go back to what I was doing?" I hesitated. Something was off, very off. "What were you laughing at?" He opened the door halfway, crossing his arms. "Just a prank video, Mom. Relax." But there was no phone in his hand. No headphones. Nothing. And for the first time I had the chilling sensation that he wasn't telling the truth. And that whatever he had been doing behind that door, he didn't want me to know. After he closed the door again, I stayed in the hallway for a full minute, listening. Nothing. Total silence. But I couldn't shake the feeling that a switch had flipped inside him. And that something darker was beginning to grow. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time the house creaked, I found myself sitting up, listening, waiting, trying to understand what exactly was happening inside Lucas's mind. And by the next morning, the morning I decided to get revenge, though not in the way he expected, I knew one thing for certain. If I didn't do something, if I didn't intervene now, I was going to lose my son. Maybe not physically, but emotionally, morally. As a human being, something had to change. And I was going to be the one to change it, even if Lucas hated me for it. When I woke up the next morning, I felt like my brain hadn't fully rested. I opened my eyes with the same tension I had fallen asleep with, as if my body knew something wasn't right, as if it was bracing itself. I heard Lucas downstairs. Cabinets opening, fridge door slamming. His footsteps, loud, irritated, heavy. I stayed in bed a little longer, thinking. I didn't want revenge in the childish sense. Yelling, punishing, trying to win. That would only push him farther away. But I needed to take control back. I needed him to see boundaries again. Respect. Consequences. Because if he kept going down this road, life would eventually hit him harder than any lesson I could teach. So I decided. That day something would change. I finally got up, tied my hair, washed my face, and went downstairs. Lucas was standing in the kitchen, cereal spilled on the counter, milk dripping down the cabinet, and he didn't even bother cleaning it. He was leaning on the fridge, scrolling his phone. "Morning," I said softly. He didn't reply, didn't look up, didn't nod, didn't acknowledge my existence. And that was the moment I felt something harden inside me, a firmness I hadn't felt in years. "Lucas," I said firmly, "answer me when I talk to you." He sighed loudly, dramatically, as if the weight of the world was on his 15-year-old shoulders. "Morning," he muttered without looking up. Not respectful, but at least it was something. "Clean the counter," I said, walking past him to make coffee. He laughed under his breath, a cold, sarcastic laugh. Not my mess. It was the same tone from the night before, the same arrogance, and I realized something terrible. He was testing me constantly. Every interaction was a power struggle. Every reply was a battle. And he thought he was winning. I took a deep breath. "Lucas, clean the counter." He looked at me like I had just spoken another language. "No, seriously no. I'm not your maid," he snapped. I turned off the coffee machine, slowly, deliberately, and then I faced him. "I'm going to say this once," I said, feeling the firmness settle into my voice. "If you live under this roof, you follow basic rules. You don't speak to me like I'm beneath you. And you clean up your own mess." He smirked. That smirk again. "Or what? You gonna cry about it?" That one hit deep. Deeper than I wanted to admit. Not because he insulted me, but because I finally understood that he had no empathy for me at all in that moment. And teenagers can be selfish, yes, but this was something else. Something darker. And that's when I made my decision. I walked past him, grabbed my keys and said, "Get in the car. We're leaving." He blinked, confused. "What? Why? Where are we going?" "To someone who's going to help us." "Help you," he corrected, rolling his eyes. "I don't need help." I said it without raising my voice. Without anger. Without fear. And that startled him. Because the one thing Lucas wasn't used to was a calm mother with boundaries. He followed me outside, not because he agreed, but because he didn't know what else to do. We drove in silence. 10 minutes. 15. 20. He kept asking, "Where are we going? Are you sending me to some therapist? Some school? Some camp?" "This is ridiculous, Mom." But I didn't answer. Not yet. Finally we turned into a small parking lot. The sign in front said, "Youth Behavioral Counseling Center." Lucas stared at it. Then at me. "You're kidding." "No," I replied calmly. "You're seriously doing this because I didn't clean the counter." "No. I'm doing this because of yesterday. Because of everything you've been doing for months. Because I'm losing you." He scoffed. "You're being dramatic." There it was again. That word. But instead of hurting, it fueled me this time. "Get out of the car, Lucas." He crossed his arms. "No." I looked at him, truly looked at him, and for a moment, just a moment, I saw fear behind the arrogance. Not fear of me. Fear of losing control. 'Cause for the first time, he wasn't the one calling the shots. "Lucas," I said softly, "if you don't get out of the car, I will call your father." That made him freeze. He knew I didn't call his father unless things were serious. And his father did not tolerate disrespect the way I did. Not that he was abusive, he wasn't, but he had no patience for entitlement. Lucas's jaw clenched. His nostrils flared. His fingers tightened on his knees. And then, he opened the door. Not because he agreed. Not because he wanted to. But because for the first time in a long time, he realized there were consequences. We walked inside together. Me trying to breathe, him trying to hide the panic behind his eyes. He didn't know it then. But that morning, the revenge he thought I wasn't capable of, it had just begun. When we stepped into the waiting room of the counseling center, Lucas's entire posture shifted. He straightened his back, lifted his chin, And suddenly he wasn't the defiant, sarcastic boy from the kitchen anymore. He looked embarrassed. There were other teenagers there. A girl with blue hair sitting beside her mother. A boy tapping his leg anxiously. Another kid staring at the wall like he wished he were anywhere else. Lucas scanned the room quickly, and I watched his pride crack a little. He shoved his hands into his pockets and whispered harshly, "Why are we here?" "To talk to someone who can help us understand what's going on," I said quietly. He clenched his jaw, eyes darting around, trying to make sure no one had recognized him, as if he were a celebrity instead of a 15-year-old kid with behavioral issues. We sat down. He bounced one leg non-stop. I tried to keep my breathing steady. After about 10 minutes, the counselor came out, a woman in her 40s with warm eyes and a calm presence that felt disarming. Her badge read, Dr. Mira Thompson, Family Behavioral Specialist. She smiled at us. "Lucas, come on in." He didn't move. He looked directly at me, as if silently begging for a way out. "Go on," I said softly. He stood up slowly, dragging his feet behind him like a toddler being taken away from his toys. I followed them into the office, which was cozy. Bookshelves, plants, a soft lamp on the desk. Nothing intimidating. But Lucas acted like he had just walked into a courtroom. He dropped into the chair, crossing his arms so tightly he looked like he was hugging himself. Dr. Thompson sat across from him, relaxed, patient. "So, Lucas," she said gently, "your mom told me things have been tense at home lately." He didn't answer. Didn't blink. Didn't breathe almost. Just stared at the wall. "Lucas," I said quietly, "please talk." He snapped his head toward me, eyes blazing. "Why are you doing this?" He growled. "Why are you acting like I'm some kind of problem?" His voice cracked slightly, not with sadness but with fury. Dr. Thompson leaned forward a little. "No one said you're a problem," she said calmly. "But your behavior has been difficult lately, right?" Lucas shrugged aggressively. "I'm fine. Everyone's overreacting." "Then help me understand something," she replied. "Your mother says you told her to clean the toilet in a not-so-kind way. How would you describe that interaction?" He scoffed. "A joke. It was a stupid game. She lost. I told her to do one chore. Big deal." "Was it just a joke?" she asked gently. He hesitated. Just a split second. But I saw it. That tiny crack in his confidence. "Yeah," he said finally. "Just a joke." Dr. Thompson nodded slowly. "And after that, you laughed for almost 5 minutes alone in your room. Loudly. But said you were watching a video. Even though you weren't." Lucas went pale. He turned to me sharply. "You told her that." "I told her everything," I replied. He scrambled to recover, sitting up straighter. "I was watching a video. You're making up stories." "Lucas," I said softly. "I saw you. You didn't have your phone." His face flushed red, embarrassment mixed with rage. He looked like he might explode. Dr. Thompson didn't flinch. "Lucas," she said, her voice soft but extremely firm. "Laughing like that, alone with no trigger, can be a sign of stress, or emotional overload, or holding in anger." She gave him a moment to respond. He didn't. "Tell me," she continued, "do you ever feel like you want to control things at home because it makes you feel safer?" His brows furrowed. "Control things? Well, I just want her to stop treating me like a kid. She cooks for you, cleans after you, wakes you up, reminds you of your tasks," Dr. Thompson listed softly. "That's treating you like a kid." Lucas shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "It's annoying," he muttered. "She's always on my back. And when she's not, she acts like a victim." Victim. That word hit me like a punch in the stomach. Dr. Thompson noticed. She turned her attention back to him. "Lucas, why does it upset you so much when your mother sets a boundary?" He rolled his eyes. "Can we stop? This is stupid." "No," Dr. Thompson said firmly. "This is important." Lucas stood up abruptly. "I'm leaving." He walked past both of us, grabbed the doorknob, and froze when he heard Dr. Thompson's next sentence. Lucas, walking away from conversations is a behavior we see in teens who feel out of control emotionally. He stopped, but didn't turn around. She continued. And they often hide that loss of control behind arrogance, sarcasm, or anger. His fingers tightened around the doorknob. "Sit down, Lucas," she said gently. "Please." Slowly, painfully slowly. He turned around, eyes glassy with something he didn't want us to see. Shame. Real shame. He sat down again, not defiant this time. Just tired. Dr. Thompson softened her voice. "Lucas, something is going on inside you. Something that made you talk to your mother the way you did. Something that made you laugh alone in your room. Something that made you react so harshly this morning." He swallowed hard. For the first time he looked like a child again, scared, uncertain, lost. "I'm not a bad person," he whispered. My heart cracked open. "I know," I said immediately. But he shook his head. I don't know why I get so angry. And when I am, it feels good. Like I'm strong. Like I'm finally in control." He said the last part with his voice breaking. Dr. Thompson nodded. "That's exactly why we're here. To figure out why you feel that way. And how to fix it." Lucas wiped his sleeve across his eyes quickly, pretending it was an itch. For the first time since this nightmare began, he didn't try to fight us. He listened. He didn't know it yet, but that session was the turning point. The moment he realized he wasn't untouchable. The moment he realized his behavior wasn't normal. The moment he realized he wasn't alone. But also, the moment he realized I wasn't afraid of him anymore. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word Ethan had thrown at me since he moved back home. "You work for me now. Do what I say. Clean the toilet." It wasn't the chores. God knows I'd cleaned worse in my life. It was the tone, the smugness, the mock authority, the way he towered over me like he was speaking to someone beneath him. My own son. The child I used to rock to sleep during thunderstorms. The boy who once cried because he thought he'd hurt my feelings for breaking a plate. That same boy now barked orders like a bitter manager in a dead-end job. By morning I had brewed 2 cups of coffee, one for me, one for him. Maybe I thought a calm talk could fix things. But when Ethan walked into the kitchen, he didn't even look at me. He snatched his mug, grunted. "There's no sugar. Why didn't you check before making it?" Then he dumped the coffee into the sink. Splashed onto my shirt. He didn't apologize. A tightness squeezed my chest. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was disappointed. Somewhere along the path from childhood to adulthood, Ethan had grown into someone I didn't recognize. Someone bitter, resentful, entitled. Someone who treated people like tools. He put on his shoes and said, "I need the car today. Be ready to leave in 10 minutes. I'll be late for work otherwise." And blinked. "Ethan, I have a doctor's appointment at 9. I told you yesterday." "Then reschedule it," he snapped. "Your stuff isn't urgent. My job is." "It is urgent," I said quietly. He scoffed. "Everything's urgent with you. Just cancel." Then he walked away. That was the moment something inside me finally snapped. Not violently, not emotionally, just firmly. A line was drawn in my mind. I watched him pacing by the front door, checking his phone, mumbling about how slow I was being. And I realized, talking wouldn't fix this. Appeasing him wouldn't fix this. Cleaning, driving, cooking, sacrificing. None of it would fix this. Ethan needed a reality check. He needed to understand consequences, boundaries, and respect. The same lessons I once taught him when he was 5 years old, but somehow he had forgotten. And if life wasn't teaching him, I would. But first I needed to understand why he was acting this way. People don't become cruel overnight. "Ethan," I said, stepping toward him slowly. "What's going on?" He didn't look up from his phone. "Did you not hear me? I said we're leaving." "That's not what I asked." He finally raised his eyes, and they were tired. Not angry. Not arrogant. Just exhausted. But instead of talking, he shut down the vulnerability with a scowl. "We're leaving. Now." There it was, that defensive mask he always wore. I grabbed my purse and keys, but not because I intended to obey. I needed to observe him carefully to understand the root of this behavior if I was going to help him. And yes, protect myself in the days to come. We got into the car. Ethan immediately reclined his seat and said, "Wake me when we arrive." "Where are we going?" I asked. "To my job, obviously." "But I said I had an appointment." "I told you, cancel it." His voice was sharp, impatient, dismissive. But his hands were trembling slightly as he set them on his lap. That detail didn't escape me. Something was wrong. Something more than rudeness. Yet I couldn't let his behavior slide. So I drove. Not to his job. Not to my appointment. But to a quiet parking lot near the river. As soon as I parked, he sat up straight. "What the hell are you doing?" I said. "I know what you said," I interrupted gently. "But I'm your mother. And something is going on with you." He rolled his eyes so hard it almost looked painful. "Don't start with your emotional lectures. I need to clock in. You need to talk." "I don't," he snapped. "Just take me to work." His voice cracked. Barely but unmistakably. Ethan wasn't just angry. He was scared. "Ethan," I said softly. "Are you in trouble?" He froze. For 3 full seconds he didn't blink. Then he scoffed, reached for the handle and tried to open the door. I locked it. "Mom, talk to me," I pleaded. "I said I'm fine." He wasn't. Not even close. His breathing grew shallow, uneven. His eyes darted around like he was trapped. He wiped his face with his sleeve, hiding it from me. That's when I understood. Something was crushing him, and he didn't know how to handle it. But instead of asking for help, he was turning the pressure outward, onto me. Because I was the safest person to break in front of. He slammed a fist against the dashboard. "Just take me to work." "No," I said. Firm. "Not until you tell me what's happening." He looked like he wanted to yell. But instead, he collapsed back into the seat and covered his face with both hands. Then, barely audible, he whispered, "I'm going to get fired today." My heart sank. He continued, voice shaking. "They gave me 1 month to fix my numbers. 1 month to prove myself. Tried, Mom. I really did. But my supervisor hates me, and the company is downsizing, and I can't lose this job. Not now. Not when I just moved out, and now I'm back home again looking like a failure." He choked on the word failure. Suddenly, all his behavior made sense. The coldness, the anger, the superiority, the desperate need for control. He wasn't trying to dominate me. He was trying to feel powerful somewhere because everywhere else in his life he felt powerless. He wasn't attacking me. He was drowning, and I was the nearest object to grab onto, even if it meant pulling me down with him. I reached over and put my hand on his shoulder. He didn't pull away this time. "Ethan," I said quietly, "you're not a failure. You're overwhelmed. And instead of opening up, you've been misdirecting it." I didn't say mistreating me. Not yet. He wiped his nose and muttered, "I don't know what to do." That was the moment my plan, the one I had been forming quietly, shifted. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about teaching him, firmly, that he couldn't treat me like a punching bag. But also showing him he wasn't alone. "Okay," I said gently. "Let's breathe. We can fix this." "But Ethan, things at home need to change too." His jaw tensed. "I know. You've been disrespectful," I added. "And that stops today." He swallowed hard. Didn't argue. Didn't snap back. For the first time in weeks. He listened. "Let's go home," I said. "Home," he repeated. "Yes, we're going to talk. We're going to plan. And you're going to apologize." He nodded slowly. I will." But he had no idea that I had something else planned too. Lesson. Boundary. A shift in our home dynamic that would change everything. The day after this conversation was the day I got my revenge. I woke up before the sun rose, not out of fear this time, but with a strange sense of focus. No hesitation, no guilt, just clarity. Yesterday had been the last straw. Lucas crossing his arms and declaring, "I don't take orders from you anymore," replayed in my head all night. And the worst part, he had enjoyed saying it. It gave him something: power, superiority, control, something he had no business craving at his age. So if he wanted to play the boss, then he was about to learn exactly what that role came with. My revenge wasn't going to be dramatic. Not loud. Not cruel. I wasn't going to yell or insult him. That would only feed the monster inside him. Well, my revenge would be quiet, practical, easy, and impossible for him to ignore. It would begin the moment he woke up. Lucas normally expected breakfast waiting for him on the kitchen counter. Eggs, toast, a juice glass, all set like he was some hotel guest. Most mornings I did it without thinking. But not today. Today the kitchen was spotless. Not a pan in sight, not a single smell of food. And I sat at the table drinking coffee alone. When I say alone, I mean emotionally detached. He came down the stairs rubbing his eyes, yawning loudly. "Mom, where's breakfast?" I didn't look up. "Make it yourself." He blinked, confused. "What? Why?" I finally raised my eyes, calm, direct, sharp. "I'm not your maid, Lucas." He stared at me like someone had unplugged the world. "You always cook. Why are you being weird?" I took a sip of coffee. "Because from now on you handle your own mornings. If you're the boss, then act like one." His jaw tightened. He wanted to argue, I could see it bubbling, but he didn't know where to start. Because deep down, he knew he had crossed a line yesterday. And he wasn't used to being confronted. He grumbled something under his breath and opened the fridge. The sound of him slamming the carton of eggs against the counter made me press my lips together. But let him be frustrated. Let him feel the inconvenience. He needed it. After breakfast, he stomped around the house, opening doors, dropping things loudly, trying to get my attention. I stayed silent, unfazed. Finally he snapped. "Mom, seriously, what's your problem?" I kept wiping the table, barely acknowledging him. "If you want something, ask respectfully." He scoffed, shaking his head. "So now you're sensitive. Whatever." "No," I replied evenly. "I'm just not responding to disrespect anymore." He froze. He wasn't used to boundaries. He wasn't used to me saying no. His confidence cracked a little, I could see it. But the mirror was working. I went to his room around noon and knocked on the door. Quiet, controlled. He opened it halfway, annoyed. "What now?" I kept my face expressionless. "Laundry, dishes, trash, your bathroom, everything." He laughed, an arrogant teenage laugh. "Why would I do that? That's your job." I stepped closer. "Not anymore. From now on you take care of your own space." Completely. He looked at me like I had grown horns. "You're joking." "I'm not." He crossed his arms. "I'm not doing any of that." He nodded. "Okay." Then I turned and walked away. 2 hours later he realized what okay meant. No socks, no clean shirts, no lunch, no snacks, no TV, no Wi-Fi password. His world stopped. At 3 p.m., he came storming into the living room. Wi-Fi. I didn't even look away from the magazine I was reading. No. Why not? I lowered the magazine slowly, met his eyes and said, "Because respect opens doors. Disrespect locks them." He blinked. That sentence hit him harder than anything else I had said. He swallowed. "So what? I'm grounded." "No. You're responsible." He stared, confused. I clarified. "Your privileges now match your behavior. You decide the tone of this house, and I respond accordingly." That stunned him, because for the first time in his life, he was the one shaping the consequences, not me. 6 p.m. he finally cracked. He stood in the doorway of the kitchen, awkward, unsure, vulnerable in a way he hadn't been for months. "Mom, can we talk? I didn't make it easy." "About what?" He hesitated, then said, not perfectly, not maturely, but honestly. "I don't like this." Kept a straight face. "Good. Because I don't like being disrespected." He said nothing. "You treated me like I was beneath you yesterday," I continued. "You spoke to me like I was disposable. So today, you're living the version of me you seem to expect. Someone who serves you nothing and gives you nothing in return." His eyes lowered. "Shame." Finally, he managed a small sorry. It wasn't enough. It wasn't deep or reflective yet. But it was the first fracture in the armor he had built. And that was exactly what I needed. My revenge had begun. Not to hurt him, but to break the pattern before it broke our family. And tomorrow the real lesson would start. Lucas barely slept that night. I could hear him pacing in his room, opening drawers, closing them, tossing clothes around as if the noise alone could restore his sense of control. The boy who used to act like the house belonged to him suddenly didn't know how to exist inside it. And that was the point. I woke up early again, quietly, letting him feel the weight of the silence he had built between us. When he finally came downstairs, he had dark circles under his eyes. Not from crying but from thinking. Overthinking. Trying to understand what had changed and why it felt so deeply uncomfortable. He pulled out a chair and sat across from me as I drank my morning coffee. For a moment he just stared, waiting for me to break the silence. I didn't. Eventually he said, "Mom, can you at least tell me what you want?" I didn't rush. I folded the newspaper, set it aside, and met his eyes calmly. "I want respect, Lucas. And until you learn how to give it, this is how things will be." He swallowed hard, like the word respect had suddenly become too big for his throat. "Okay, but I apologized yesterday." "You said one word," I replied. "That's not the same thing as understanding." He leaned back, frustrated but quieter than before. The arrogance he carried like armor wasn't shining anymore. It looked cracked, even dented in places. It was working. Around noon he tried his next move, testing boundaries the way a child touches a hot stove twice just to make sure it really burns. He followed me into the hallway. "Can you unlock the router now? I need internet for school." I turned, eyebrow raised. "School assignments." He hesitated. "Too long." "Maybe." "No password then." His shoulders dropped. Not dramatically, just enough for me to see it had hit him. He wasn't getting what he wanted through shortcuts anymore. Later, when lunchtime came around, he drifted into the kitchen like a lost puppy. "What are we having?" "I already ate." He looked around as if expecting hidden plates, a pot on the stove, something. "You didn't make anything." "No," I said simply. "You're responsible for your meals now." He wasn't angry this time, just deflated. He rummaged through cabinets, confused by the idea of preparing something for himself. Every sound he made, the fridge door opening, the cabinet closing, the microwave beeping, felt like a small victory for me. Not because he struggled, but because he finally understood that comfort isn't a guarantee. He sat down with the saddest-looking sandwich I had ever seen. Half cheese, half bread, and no pride left. He didn't say a word as he ate. In the afternoon he tried a different tactic, following me into the living room, sitting on the edge of the couch and waiting. This time he didn't look demanding. He looked young, vulnerable, like the boy who used to bring me his drawings and ask if they were good enough. After a few minutes, he whispered, "Mom, are you mad at me? Like for real?" I closed the book in my hands. "I'm not mad, Lucas. I'm disappointed. And I'm done pretending your behavior is normal." He looked at his feet, breathing unevenly. He wasn't ready to cry, but he was close. I could see the tension in his jaw, the way he clenched his hands, the way he tried to swallow whatever emotion was rising. "I didn't think I was hurting you," he said, voice low. "I was just joking around." "Jokes don't make someone feel worthless," I replied softly. "You treated me like I didn't matter." He wiped his face quickly, pretending it was just an itch. I didn't mean to. I know. And I did. But knowing his intention didn't erase the impact. The rest of the afternoon passed with him hovering near me, not daring to ask for anything. He took out the trash without me asking. He picked up his shoes from the hallway. He even folded a blanket on the couch. All small acts, but each one a sign that he was no longer coasting through the house expecting someone else to fix the mess. By evening he finally broke. He entered the kitchen while I was cleaning and stood there, hands shoved into his pockets, head down. Mom, can we please talk? For real this time. Oh, listen. I put the dish towel aside and turned to him. I'm listening. He took a breath, gathering whatever courage he had left. I don't like how things feel now. I feel like you don't want me around. That's how I felt yesterday, I answered. When you talked to me the way you did. He closed his eyes as if absorbing the impact of that sentence. I didn't realize it was that bad. But it was. And I needed you to feel even a small piece of it. He nodded slowly, understanding beginning to settle into him like a long-delayed truth. I'm sorry. Really sorry. Not the quick kind. Mean it. I studied him carefully this time. This wasn't a child trying to get privileges back. This was remorse. Uncomfortable, unpolished, real. I placed a hand on his shoulder, gentle but firm. Good. We can start from there. He exhaled shakily, like he had been holding his breath for days. The revenge had worked. Not because it hurt him but because it opened his eyes. But the lesson wasn't over yet. Tomorrow would be the most important part, rebuilding what had cracked and making sure it never cracked the same way again. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was nervous but because there was too much clarity in my head. Every detail of the next morning played out like a movie I had already watched 10 times. By sunrise I wasn't tired. I was strangely calm. At 8:17 a.m., I heard James's door open. He always woke up around that time, dragging his feet, yawning loudly like the world owed him rest. I waited in the kitchen, coffee in hand, laptop open, papers spread neatly on the table. When he walked in, he didn't even look at me. He opened the fridge, grabbed the last juice, mine which I had bought the day before, and drank straight from the bottle. Then he turned and finally saw the table. "What's all this?" he asked, eyebrows dropping into a suspicious frown. "Sit," I said gently. He snorted. "No, I don't have time for whatever this is. I'm going out." "You're not," I said. It wasn't a threat, just a fact, and he felt it. He paused with his hand on the fridge door, studying me. Maybe he sensed something different in my voice. Maybe he finally realized I wasn't running in circles anymore. "What's going on?" he asked again, slower this time. I pushed a folded sheet of paper toward him. "Read." He rolled his eyes and unfolded it dramatically, like a teenager being told to do homework. But as soon as he saw the first line, his expression shifted. His name was at the top. Then the words, "Notice to vacate." He blinked hard, rereading it like maybe the letters would rearrange into something nicer. "What the hell is this?" he asked, voice tightening. "It's exactly what it looks like," I said. "You have 30 days to move out." He laughed. At first, an incredulous laugh, then an irritated, louder one. "You're kicking me out?" "Me? Your son? Are you seriously out of your mind?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't match his tone. "I'm not kicking you out. I'm giving you space to be the man of the house you keep claiming to be." He slammed the paper on the table. "I live here." "No," I said, meeting his eyes steadily. "You stay here. You don't live here. You don't contribute, you don't clean, you don't pay for anything. Not the food, not the bills, not even your own phone service. I've been maintaining your entire lifestyle while you treat me like an employee." "That's not true," he snapped, but even he didn't believe the words coming out of his mouth. I pushed a second document toward him. Bank statements, utility bills, rent receipts, 6 months' worth. All with one thing in common. His contribution was zero. He didn't touch the papers. He just stared at them like they were written in some foreign language he had never learned. "I raised you," I said softly. "Not so you could walk around my house insulting me, giving me orders, and expecting me to cater to you. You're not my boss. You're my son. But you stopped acting like one." He shook his head, pacing back and forth. "This is insane. You can't just, to your own son. I'm family." I felt something inside me harden. "Family doesn't treat each other the way you've been treating me." He stopped pacing. His jaw clenched. "What am I supposed to do?" he asked, but the question wasn't angry, it was scared. For the first time in months, maybe years, I heard genuine fear in his voice. "Figure it out," I said. "Like every adult does." "I don't have money," he said. "I don't have savings." He nodded. "You'll need to get a job then." He recoiled like I had slapped him. "A job? I help Dad sometimes." "You go there twice a month," I corrected. "And you spend the rest of the time playing games, sleeping and complaining." His eyes began darting around the room, looking for some argument that would save him, some leverage he thought he still had. "You're seriously doing this," he whispered. "I am." Silence fell between us. Heavy, early, necessary. Then, trying a new angle, he narrowed his eyes. "You're doing this because I told you to clean the bathroom, aren't you?" It almost made me laugh. "Almost." "No," I said. "I'm doing this because you told me you were the boss of the house. And because you've treated me like a servant for months. The bathroom was just the moment I realized you didn't respect me anymore." He slumped into the chair, face buried in his hands. "I don't know what to do," he muttered. "You learn," I said simply. "You grow. You take responsibility. And maybe after some time you come back not as someone who demands things, but as someone who understands the value of what he had." He didn't answer. He sat there for a long time, swallowing the truth piece by piece. I could almost see him shrinking, not in a pathetic way, but in the way someone shrinks when the weight they've ignored finally lands on their shoulders. When he finally spoke again, his voice was quieter. "So, you're serious?" "Yes. And I really have 30 days. "You do." He let out a long, shaky breath. "Okay, fine. I'll figure it out." It wasn't an apology. Not yet. But it was the first honest sentence he'd said to me in months. And that was enough for now. The next days were strange, quiet in a way that felt almost unnatural. After months of constant tension, raised voices and slammed doors, the silence felt heavy. Not peaceful but dense, like the air right before a storm. James spent most of his time in his room. No loud gaming. No blasting music. No stomping around the house with that entitled attitude he had grown so used to. It was as if my decision had unplugged something in him. For the first time he seemed to understand that actions had consequences. On the third morning I found him at the kitchen table, something I hadn't seen in years. He was awake before me. He had my laptop open and several tabs pulled up. Job listings. Real ones. Not the easy money scams he used to fall for. He didn't see me at first. His shoulders were tense. His hair was messy. And he looked young. Not childish but like the boy I remembered. The one who once believed the world was within reach if he worked for it. I didn't say anything. I just poured my coffee. He finally noticed me and closed the laptop halfway like he was embarrassed. "I'm looking," he muttered. "I see that. I don't know what I'm doing," he added quickly. "I've never really. I mean, the last real job I had was when I was 19. "You'll figure it out," I said. And I meant it. He nodded, staring at the laptop again, not opening it, just resting his fingers on the lid like he wasn't sure he deserved to touch it. Later that day I heard him on the phone. No yelling, no attitude, just quiet, uncomfortable conversations. Asking about interviews, availability, requirements. His voice kept cracking, but he didn't hang up once. In the afternoon he went out. Not dressed like he usually did for errands, sloppy, half asleep, dragging his hoodie around. This time he wore clean jeans, a decent shirt. He even combed his hair. He came back 2 hours later with a folded paper in his hand. "I have an interview tomorrow," he announced, and for a moment he almost sounded proud. "That's good," I said. "It's at a hardware store. That's a good place to start." He nodded, but I saw something flicker across his eyes, a mix of shame and relief. A year ago he would have laughed at the idea of working in retail. He used to say jobs like that were beneath him. Now he was grateful for the chance. He opened the fridge, grabbed water, hesitated, then turned to me. "Do you think I can do this?" he asked. It wasn't a manipulative question, not a guilt tactic, not an attempt to get sympathy. It was honest. "Yes," I said. "But you have to want to." He swallowed hard, nodded, and went to his room. That night I heard him practicing answers to interview questions. Loud. He even looked up videos on how to talk to your future employer. It was awkward and stilted, but he tried. Really tried. The next morning he left early. Too early. He was nervous. I could see it in the way he checked the mirror 3 times before walking out. I watched from the window as he stood at the bus stop. His foot tapped anxiously. He didn't use his phone. He just kept breathing shallowly, wiping his palms on his pants. When he came home later, he didn't speak for a minute. "I think it went okay." "That's good. They said they'll call by the end of the week." "That's even better." He nodded, and for a moment we just existed in the same room without anger, without resentment, without me feeling like I had to defend my own home. Later that afternoon, as I was folding laundry, he walked into the living room. He looked awkward again, hands stuffed into his pockets. "Mom," he said, voice uneasy. "Can we talk?" "Of course." He sat down on the edge of the sofa like he was afraid it might swallow him. "I didn't realize how much you did," he said quietly. "Like all of it. The bills, the groceries, the cleaning. I just took it all for granted." I didn't say a word. He needed to get this out. "And I was awful to you," he continued. "I don't know when it started. I don't know why I treated you like that. I think I just kept expecting things to be the same forever. Like I could just be taken care of. Even when I was acting like a jerk." I felt something tighten in my chest. Not anger. Just a sad recognition. "I'm sorry," he said finally. And it wasn't forced. It wasn't defensive. It wasn't wrapped in excuses. It was real. "I know," I said softly. "And I appreciate it." He nodded and looked around the room like he was seeing it with new eyes. "Can I help with anything?" he asked. It wasn't a grand gesture. It wasn't a miracle transformation. But it was a beginning. He vacuumed the living room. Not perfectly, but he did it. Then he washed the dishes. He even took out the trash without being asked. And for the first time in a long time the house felt lighter. Not because the chores were done, but because the weight between us had shifted. That night I heard him on the phone again, this time with his father. He wasn't complaining. He wasn't blaming me. He wasn't twisting the story. He simply said, "I need to get my life together." And somehow that sentence meant more than any apology. The week passed slowly, but something had changed in the house. The tension that used to sit like a thick fog between us had thinned. Not gone, not forgotten, but lighter, like the air after days of rain. On Thursday afternoon, James came home later than usual. I was in the kitchen preparing dinner when I heard the front door open. His steps were quick, almost rushed. "Mom," he called out. I turned around, and before I could say anything, he held up a folded slip of paper with shaking hands. "I got the job." For a moment I didn't speak. I just looked at him, really looked at him. His eyes were wet, but he wasn't crying. His chest was rising and falling too quickly, like he'd run all the way home. "That's great," I said quietly. "You earned it." He let out a breath, almost like he'd been holding it for years. Then he sat down at the table and put his head in his hands, laughing once under his breath. "I can't remember the last time someone wanted me for something real," he said. "Not games, not stupid promises, just work. A chance. You needed forward motion," I said. "And you found it." He nodded, wiping his eyes like he didn't want me to see, though I had seen him cry countless times throughout his life. He spent the evening filling out onboarding forms, preparing documents, organizing a schedule, things he used to consider boring, beneath him, unnecessary. Now he handled each paper with care, like it was proof that he was earning back parts of himself he had lost. But something else happened that night. While I was cleaning the counter, he approached me again. Different this time. Thoughtful. Serious. "I've been thinking," he said, "about moving." I froze for a moment. Not out of fear. Not out of sadness. Just surprise. "Moving," I repeated. He nodded. "Not far. Just not here. I think living on my own would help. I don't want to fall back into old habits. And I don't want to be a burden on you again." It wasn't the reaction I had expected. After everything, I assumed he'd cling to the comfort of staying here as long as possible. But the truth was, my decision had shaken him, yes, but also awakened something healthy, something necessary. "You don't have to rush," I said gently. "I'm not rushing," he replied. "I'm choosing." Those words carried a different weight. They weren't about running away from consequences. They were about stepping into responsibility. We spent the next hour looking at small studio apartments. Cheap ones, rough ones, places that would require effort and sacrifice. But he didn't complain about the prices or the sizes or the locations. He researched bus routes, grocery costs, utility estimates. For the first time in years, he was planning forward. Later, when the house grew quiet and he had gone to his room, I sat alone at the kitchen table and let myself breathe, a long, deep breath that carried months of exhaustion out of my lungs. He wasn't the same boy who had ordered me around. He wasn't the same young man who had mocked responsibility and treated me like an employee in his imaginary kingdom. He was rebuilding, and I had helped him get there. Not by giving more, not by sacrificing myself again, but by stepping back and letting him face the consequences he had always avoided. The next morning, something small but meaningful happened. He woke up early before me again and brewed coffee. Badly. Too strong. A little burnt. But he handed me a mug with both hands and said, "I wanted to start the day right." It was clumsy. It was imperfect. It was genuine. His job started on Monday. On Sunday night, he laid out his clothes, packed his bag twice, set 3 alarms, and even asked me if we could eat dinner together. During the meal, he told me something I had waited years to hear, something I didn't even realize I needed. "I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. And I understand if you're not ready to trust me completely again. But I'm going to earn it back. Not with words. With actions." I placed my fork down and looked at him. "That's all I've ever wanted," I said. "Not perfection. Just effort." He nodded slowly, absorbing the words. The next day, he woke up before sunrise. He dressed neatly, ate breakfast, and stood at the door with a nervous smile. "Wish me luck," he asked. "You don't need luck," I replied. "Just keep going." When he walked out, I watched him from the window, just as I had when he left for his first day of school so many years ago. He looked older now, wiser, heavy with mistakes but carrying them like lessons instead of chains. The bus arrived. He got on, and for the first time in a very long time, felt hope, not just for him, but for us, for our relationship, for our home, for the dignity I had reclaimed, and the humility he had learned. He wasn't perfect. I wasn't perfect. But we were finally moving forward, separately, yet together in a way that mattered more than obedience or control. And as the bus pulled away, I whispered a quiet truth to myself. My son finally became a man. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this story. If this touched you, surprised you, or made you think, then I invite you to join our community by subscribing to the channel. I share new stories every week. stories filled with emotion, twists, family drama, and unforgettable lessons. Your support means the world and helps this channel grow so we can keep bringing these moments to life. And before you leave, don't forget to check the link in the description. There's a new story waiting for you right now, one that might be even more shocking than this one. Click the link, subscribe, and let's continue this journey together.